Excuse me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
ECSI fans, do you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all of your sports books and track all of your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You can also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as they're the best account on the platform. Head to the App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire to download the app.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is the Dawg and Desperado Fantasy Football Show, volume number 14. 2 touchdowns, 14, Mr. Childs. October 20th, 2023. The weekend is here. Our weekly trip with Mr. Shawn Childs, Hall of Famer, NFFC, NFBC. Talking regular season, talking some injuries, talking some waiver wire pickups. But most importantly, talking about the Millie Maker, where this week, we already had the Thursday game. We have 6 teams on buys. Can't use the Miami Dolphins and Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday night primetime. And then San Francisco and Minnesota. So the menu has shrunk. So just maybe we could thread that needle and become a millionaire on Sunday. Only time will tell. Shout out to our new sponsor in partnership with WagerWire. If you have not already, please go to Google Play or wherever you download your apps. Download WagerWire. It's free. Take a look. Sync up all your available sports books with your live plays. Keep track of your ROI. Going to be doing a lot of work with Travis and Zach throughout the rest of this year and into 2024 and beyond. Shout out to the guys behind the desk and glass here, Joseph Shea, Evan Lewis, Olu, Bennett, and of course, Mr. Cade Horton. Thank you for all you do. But without further ado, let's bring in the co-star of this show, the one and only, Mr. Shawn Childs.
Yeah, the waiver wire commercial, WagerWire commercial, remind me of the days of the development of the gambling for you and me. The fingers bookie that I used to call into, and the infamous Mike Addy. And the highlight moment for him, I remember, was working at a Mitchell Steakhouse, busboy, calling in for a line. Yeah, and what's the line on the Florida State, North Carolina game? North Carolina is minus 44.5. Well, really? That's a lot of points for Florida. I'll take Florida State 44.5. Well, as we know, the game was probably already over, and they won by 60. But you got to start somewhere when you're investing in the games. They have a lot more information now, and there's a lot more outlets and different prop bets and all kinds of stuff you can invest on. So that was the introduction into the gaming side of it and following football in a different way. But the fantasy market has taken us in a totally different direction, and it does keep the door open to peek into the games if we like. But I don't think I don't need to bet on the games, as far as me, because I've been through that and I lived through a lot of experiences, and I know ultimately that the home court has a better opinion than I do. So, for me, anyways.
Well, I'll piggyback off of that. Living college student, obviously home for the summer, come home on the weekends. No internet, no cell phones, of course, limited hours, or you left it on the voicemail with Mike with fingers. Back then, I was a $25 and $50 player, and he on the recorder was a basketball game, and I think it was like North Carolina and Kansas, and North Carolina was -6, and the game had already been played, and North Carolina won by 20. And so I left a voicemail on the recorder. Yeah, this is number 248 or whatever my number was back then. Give me 500 on North Carolina. So I came home. I think we were at the bowling alley all night. You were working, and I come home at night and thinking, hey, I'm $500 richer. I'm a smart man. And all of a sudden, the bedroom door opens up, and there's Carl, and he goes, hey, Jeff. I was like, yeah. He goes, yeah, some guy called about that $500 bet. It goes, you didn't win. The game was already played. And so I remember you saying if you had just stuck to the 25 or 50, he never would have known.
Yeah. And then you get in trouble from the parents as well, you know.
Yeah. So the intro, let's just start. Listen, regular season fantasy football is a cruel, cruel world. It doesn't matter where you draft. There's landmines everywhere. To win regular season titles and then eventually, hopefully, go on to national titles, you need, I was asked a million years ago in New York City. I was interviewed, and then how much luck is involved versus the skill aspect. And me being wet behind the ears back then, I said, oh, it's 95%, skill, 5% luck. Well, we know that is not the case. In 2017, one of the two national title teams, I didn't have a starting quarterback in week 13, and I took 3 off the scrap heap. And as we all know, Blake Bortles was a part of winning us a national title. Going back, Sean, to June, July, and August when we're drafting, getting ready for September, the number 1 consensus pick, Justin Jefferson, he gone. That number 2 pick, CMC, everyone was such afraid to take because is he going to stay healthy? Nicked up. We don't know if he's playing on Monday night. But the injuries just keep compounding and pounding. My diamond in the rough, Devin A-Chain, gone. My point is, I was proactive a few weeks ago, and I got Ronnie Rivers on 9 of 12 teams. And this Wednesday, I had to cut him because he's out 4 to 6 weeks, and he's useless to me. Can you talk to the people watching and listening just what it is like to go through this madness of thinking you hit a gold mine, and then 2 weeks later it turns into a waiver wire cut and you're helpless?
Yeah, I mean, I got 2 examples. I mean, I drafted one NFFC team for myself, and started with first 4 weeks. A Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow team averaged 101.5 points for the first 4 weeks, but massive hole. Bounced back with a 190 and 1, so I went 1 and 4, and then I won last week with a low score, maybe 118. But I'm still. When I'm looking at it, I'm 11th place. I'm 100 away from, maybe 105 away from second place. So I feel like I'm not out of it, right? I didn't have Kamara on that team to start the year, and I didn't have Jonathan Taylor. So hopefully those players can help me push up the standings, and the rest of the players do what they're supposed to. Burrow has a correction where Chase has already done it. In the reverse of that, I have a friend of mine, Chris Schinker, who might even listen to this, that he had a team going into last week, first place in the NFFC, right? Feeling good about it. What does he put up? 66.90 points. He gets run over. One's team scores like 196, goes flying past them, and whatever else, everybody else is gaining 60 or 70. So now he's got, say, 829 points for the year. The leader's 875, so he's 46 out. He's not dead in the water and had a crappy week, but he went from first to sixth, and somebody steamrolled him by 130 points. So when you're looking at a team, in my case, I'm down by 100 points from second. All it takes is really 2 good weeks, and we have really 8 more weeks plus the next few weeks. We got to clear all these bye weeks, so we'll see if some of the depth that I have or other teams have play out where it's helpful. But there is times during the year that, you can catch hit on a player that fills in, that really kind of carries you. So it's a very interesting game. It's not like baseball where you kind of build as the season goes on, you try to maintain your edges in some categories. It's fantasy points. So your team can be the greatest in September, and then you can score 100 points for 4 straight weeks, for whatever reason, injuries or correction games or, bye weeks. So it's, hopefully, where I'm in a position where 3 and 4 were pretty good. Last couple weeks, before last week weren't that great. So I'm hoping that, I can get some consistency, maybe like the H-hand guy that you had catch a couple big games, and maybe that's Gibbs for me. Doesn't need a 50 or 35. Just give me a couple 20 to put some competitive scores. And I think last year in midseason around this time, I think Stevenson started to put it together, and ETN, and they started to help teams. Unfortunately, those players weren't difference makers in the postseason, but at least it got you close where you had some more teams in the hunt and potentially made the playoffs. So the running back position, I think, was going to be the trickiest of all the positions, is getting out there. Tight ends are kind of quiet around the board, but there's some that will end up being okay. And there is about 8 receivers that have been pretty good. So you got to have at least 1 or 2 of those, or somebody else that kind of emerges as the season goes on. And the quarterback is, there's enough there to quarterback to kind of keep me in the front, maybe not have the best team. So running back will be the key, I think, going down the next few weeks.
Yeah, and I know exactly what kind of sort of Chris is feeling. Doing well in some spots on the lid or seconds, in the mid pack, and I do the same thing. I'll look at the standings. I'll see how much I'm away from first, but then my eyes automatically go, well, how far am I out of second and third? So if I'm 120 out of first, which, as you said, as us being seasoned veterans here, there's still plenty of time. We can catch lightning in a bottle. It just takes that one big week, or, get a couple 150s under the belt versus teams getting, 101s, 102s. The classic that I am in, 14 teams, which is one of my all-time favorites, started dead ass last. And I think we put up like a 92 the first week, and I'm just like, relax. Then we had 2 monster weeks, and we're in second place. The world's, right behind you, rainbow puppies, cupcakes, and unicorns. Well, the last 2 weeks, 101, 103. Now you're back 100 out. 5 teams have passed you. So it really makes it hard when you look at it, all that work that you did to get up there. And then as you talked about, Chris, a few minutes ago, that 1 week where you just, you put up the clunker of all clunkers, and then someone comes by you and waves to you, and they beat you that week by 125 points.
Yeah, I guess when you look at it, we're doing enough, and there's more volume in play here than it used to be. You used to have one team, and that was your one chance. Now it's, if you got a few teams, you're hoping that one team kind of gels, and if you can get that one team to have a great season, then hopefully that you can pop and maybe have a chance at a run at a overall championship, and that makes your fantasy career maybe or it makes your season. But ultimately, if you're having a bad year and you break even, it's a pretty good year. You survived and you get to play again. So, but our goal is to somehow sneak in one of these overall titles and have the right structure where we get multiple teams that are in the hunt. So at this point, we're not in it for sure, but we'll see what happens.
Last night, Trevor Lawrence, quote unquote, game time decision looks pretty good. ETN scores 2 quick touchdowns. Defense played great. We talked backstage about check down Charlie and Derek Carr. He's got an explosive wide receiver with Chris Olave. He's got the veteran with Michael Thomas. But yet it's Alvin Kamara to the left, Alvin Kamara to the right, and then it's a dump off pass to him. Want to piggyback off of this. Wide receivers, Calvin Ridley, 1 catch yesterday. Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, I'm going to say DJ Moore now, who's had a couple big weeks now with Fields out for God knows how long. Season long, not what we're going to get to in the Millie Maker. What did I know you taught me a long time ago, you always play your studs. But how you feeling this morning when you wake up after a one catch with Ridley and seeing what some of these other big time wide receivers that were drafted second, third, fourth round are doing, and how do you feel Sunday putting them into your lineups?
Well, I mean, ultimately, even finding replacements to nudge somebody out. I know that people were drafting like Sky Moore in the 10th round, and I had him, in multiple teams, and you're going to slide in like a Sky Moore for a T. Higgins or something like that. That one guy has potential, even though he's got clunkers, or, might be able to get a 30-point game. But we have a lot of players, receivers that are underachieving, and we also have some that have done really well. Ultimately, this week there's multiple quarterbacks. What is San Francisco? Not San Francisco. The Raiders quarterback's out. The Bears quarterback's out. Giants quarterback, good chance of being out, right? Who else is that? So, so there's, Indianapolis playing with a backup quarterback. Mac Jones should be out, right? But, so there's just really, when you look at it, it's you can't have good receivers without good quarterback play, right? It has to start somewhere, and then whatever the structure is. So, just finding the right players, and, and really offenses have, I think Jim Ferrari told me that the unders have come in 60% of the time this year. You'd probably know that better than I am. And I think the over-under totals have come down a little bit. That doesn't mean we're going to have higher scoring games. They're just eventually going to lower the total where more overs come in, and eventually they find a pocket where, they get close to 50% in most weeks, and, they end up being profitable. But so, we got even, we have 5 quarterbacks. I think this is CJ Stroud, Ritter, quarterback for Carolina. We got Love. These are first-year quarterbacks, so hopefully some of these players play better in the second half. And then, the veterans, Mahomes is, he needs some wide receivers to do something for him to be elite. So, it's a trickle-down effect. And, to this point of the season, what do you say? There's 4 teams with really good offenses: Miami, Philly, Buffalo, and who else? Maybe
Cleveland.
Who? Cleveland? Oh, San Francisco.
You talk about
a really good offense, like that you think they can score. There's not that many teams
offense.
Yeah. So Miami's scoring crazy amount of points. They're one of their pieces to the puzzle has been coming in the DFS market in most weeks, or at least being a threat to make the ticket. And then, the 49ers, when they got everybody on the field, they got 3 good receivers, quarterback's efficient, top running back. The Vikings probably would have had it with Justin Jefferson. They didn't really have the running back position to add, and they kind of really didn't they scored okay, but they, they're just kind of didn't really, reach the level that you might think with the talent they have, at least receiver wise. And then Allen, he's got Diggs and, Gabe Davis to score some touchdowns, but the tight ends aren't doing anything. The running back doesn't get enough chance. It seems play calling's really kind of sketchy, where it's like they want to go downfield. It's almost like a schoolyard type of situation. So, they need to do a little bit better there. So I don't know. So realistically, we're, looking at, 4 or 5 teams that are going to carry a lot of these fantasy teams. And I guess you could say the Rams teams have been kind of fun, at least for the fantasy perspective, because Kyron Williams, Puka, and then, we got Kupp coming back, and, even Tutu helped out. So, some outlier players there. So it's an interesting dilemma. And some of these other players that have done poorly, we're hoping they have some sort of rebound correction. Maybe nobody, like Judy's like in the doghouse this week, and it's not a bad matchup, but, who's going to, will one of those receivers go off against the Packers?
Want to shout out to Kyle Singer. Thank you so much. He offers a trade question, and it's funny because this reminds me of something that I offered our good friend and follower or Stu Bunting way back when I was trying to get Chris Carter. I was in first place, and I had 4 or 5 starters for him that he could have plugged and play, and I was looking to get Chris Carter. And Stu, I love you to death. His famous words always was, JD, that's a great offer, but I'm going to have to hold off and stay. And Kyle's got kind of sort of one of these right here where I think I know the side you'll lean, Sean, but I'm going to throw it out there anyways. His trade offer is Lamar, Ford, Michael Thomas, and Madison, and he'll receive Swift and Tyreek Hill. He goes, I just need thoughts because I'd have to stream a quarterback, and it's a 12-man full PPR. And I learned from you, and I've been using this thought process, especially in my drafting, Sean. Go to the resumes to guys that have put up a 50 burger or 50 points or better. There's only a handful of them. The Jamar Chases, the Tyreek Hills. So if you have these guys on your team, you never trade them. But if you have the opportunity to get them, then you do everything in your power. I'll just say this, Kyle. Swift is the wild card. We know when he's getting his touches, he has been done very, very good in fantasy. Tyreek Hill is just a beast. He's uncoverable right now. So obviously a great wide receiver there. Now, I'm going to go to the flip side. Not a lot of people are talking about this. Lamar, for fantasy purposes, hasn't done well. He hasn't got the legs going, the rushing touchdowns. We're getting to the cold weather part of this season, the second half. The other thing they're not talking about is all the drops that are going on. Lamar's actually throwing the ball pretty damn well, and he's not getting enough credit, and not enough people are talking about it. 2 weeks ago, 7 drops. He had a wide open touchdown for Bateman, which would have been a 69-yarder. Andrews dropped 2 touchdowns, and even Zay Flowers dropped a couple. So, again, I want to wait to hear what the mayor has to say about this trade. I think I know what he's going to say, but I'm going to pass it over to you, Sean.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a no-brainer. I mean, it's, I don't even remember the other 2 players, but I mean, it's if you can get Hill and Swift, you're upgrading 2 players in your lineup. You're trading 4 for 2. You might as well run to the window and pick up Gainwell if he's out there and back up Swift right away, because the Philly running back is going to be decent. And Swift's been gaining momentum and catch, especially if this is a PPR format. So you get a difference maker. It's the old, Yahoo, ESPN trade. Let's give you a 3 for 1. Let's hit him with volume. All right, if you don't want free, we'll give you 4. And then the guy, when you gets the star player, he goes to the waiver wire, picks up 2 players and, kind of fixes the holes. I mean, the difference between Lamar, he has potential to have some big games, but he hasn't been impactful. He does run it and he could get better. His completion rates, like you said, you mentioned the drops, but his completion rate's been over 70%. And I think 4 of his 5 or 6 games, it's pretty good. And he's been off target, especially against the Steelers. He threw a lot of balls that are kind of way off where he had guys open too. So that, he's completing 70% with drops and, being out of sync due to the pass rush or something going on, throwing on the run. So he can settle in. He's going to be a little bit better. So Ford splitting time. And, so I would make the deal. And as far as Stu Bunting is, the rule number 1 with him is this: if you really like somebody and you want him on your team, don't let him go to Stu Bunting because he's a black hole. You'll never get him off his team.
That is correct. So my lead-in, very simply was there's 6 teams off this week, Sean. We just had New Orleans and Jacksonville. They're off the board. The 8:00 primetime game, the Dolphins and Eagles, a lot of players on that game. And then even San Francisco and Minnesota on Monday. No Jefferson, obviously he's hurt. On the San Fran side, who's playing, who's not playing? The CMC playing, is Debo playing? But that's off the board. So you got a real small menu. We talked backstage to potentially a few spots here and there. But give me your initial thought process to all the watchers and listeners. the mindset of a week like this, where again, you got 6 teams on a bye, and then you got 3 other teams, or 6 other teams, I should say, that you can't use. So this menu is real short. So the all button at the Raynham Dog Track would be real good here. But how do you go about structuring something like this?
Well, I mean, it all starts really is, what kind of players can offer an impact, scores, and do they stand out this week? And I think that going through the initial projections, Kenneth Walker, it's not a secret. I mean, he scored 6 touchdowns in the last 4 games. He's probably averaged like 90-something, 95 yards. He's getting a few catches. In the last game Seattle played at home against Carolina, scored 37 points. He was pretty active in that game. They scored 37 at Detroit. Geno Smith hasn't really, I think he only has 5 touchdowns after 5 games. He hasn't really lived up to expectations, but he still has 3 pretty good receivers. And I think they showed a play with Njigba had a long touchdown potentially if Smith would have aired it Cincinnati in the second half, and he would have had like a 40-yarder, and he was wide open and he didn't let it go, and he ran the ball. He got a first down and got like 20 or 30 yards, so it was still okay, but he could have – the Jigba didn't do something, but he was 4 for 48, but he had a play where he could have scored. So there's like maybe that's a signal that he's a little more progressive in this game with the 2 receivers. So, so Walker, you would think naturally, and against Arizona, a bottom tier, defense, a team that wasn't expected one bunch of games. This is probably a pretty good spot for Seattle overall. And Walker will be a high percentage own, and I think he's the starting point. But on the flip side, when you play in the DFS market, when you play in favorites, you have less if that player doesn't live up to expectations. And if you can beat him and find another area of to be contrarian, you might be able to create an edge. And that in this particular case, Geno Smith could be that player. So I kind of have an open mind that Geno hasn't been that bad in 3 games. Needs some touchdown passes, ideally, 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Will it happen in this game? But could I see Walker scoring 2 touchdowns, getting 100 yards? Absolutely. I think, could I see him being I think Mostert was 53% owned last week, and he was, kind of a layup, but he was chalk. But I mean, I don't know if he'll be that high, but he will be popular in a lot of formats. So I think, so Walker is the first player that stands out. And then in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about, Geno as the contrarian. And then, at wide receiver, haven't really got through all of them reading it, but, a lot of the wide receivers, we get, Kupp's salary, 2 good games. He had was one of the top players, which was, pretty same thing playing against Arizona, but he's 9,500. Tyreek's off. AJ Brown's off. Devontae Smith's the 4th rated receiver right now. Probably going to change when I do updated because they're going to play with the backup quarterback. Stephon Diggs, high rated. Ayuk's off. Amon St. Brown really kind of came on last week, so he's up there. And then we got, DJ Moore playing with a backup quarterback, so he probably has to be adjusted. Cooper's probably rated okay. Really kind of a better player that gets overlooked. What his Cooper's salary is? He's 6,100, which isn't bad if, Watson looks like he's going to play. Because look at last week. I mean, he made a couple of good plays. I mean, Cooper is a really good receiver that can, and he showed you last year, playing with less quarterbacks. So if Watson can kind of click, but, is his shoulder okay to deliver the ball downfield? And he's coming back. And I mean, the Colts have given a lot of stuff. So the Cleveland stuff's kind of a wild card. But anyway, so, wide receiver, can you fit Kupp in? Is Adams is most likely not going to have the ceilings. People are going to gravitate to Diggs. Amon St. Brown has a 1-game winning streak. So he's I kind of think of Amon Brown now as, we thought even going into the year that he was kind of had a Cooper Kupp type of opportunity. Wasn't sure he can make as many big plays, but he's doing better this year. And he has 100 yards in three games, and he has 3 touchdowns in 3 different games, and he even sat out a week. So he kind of fills, the thought of, playing against a Ravens pretty good defense, but they like to rush the quarterback. He's going to get the ball out quickly. That game looks like it's going to be a lower over under, but in back of my mind, I know the Ravens could probably be beaten a secondary if somebody wants to challenge them. And Detroit's been pretty good of, moving the ball around and getting their secondary receivers, and Goff's done better than expected as far as like fantasy ranking. So I think there's more in that game offensively, and hopefully maybe Gibbs help. So interesting that I think Brown is a player that I have to think about, especially if I land on Lamar Jackson with Mark Andrews at tight end, who I thought when I did the tight end write-ups and I did the kind of went through the projections, he's only projected for 6 catches, 73 yards, and he's got it says 90% chance of scoring, but probably a 100% chance of scoring a touchdown. He looks like he's a pretty good player where if Detroit could score and there could be some follow through, this game could be a little higher scoring because the Ravens have been a little less. So kind of really want to land on at tight end with Andrews somehow. I want to, start with Walker, obviously. I mean, you got to take what they give you at the racetrack, even though he's a favorite, you still can hit the superfecta for big money if the other some of the other long shots come in. So it's not like that. So you play the best players with the best matchup. So, so Walker's my starting point. Kittle's in my thoughts. I mean, not Kittle, Andrews. And I think I'll definitely have those two players on my single lineup. And then it's settling in. Can I fit the rest if I use Lamar? Or even last week, I kind of drifted to, I found Ritter when I started to do the teams, and I really evaluated that combination was a lot better with Ritter, with London and Pitts. Pitts was really low. London was fair price. Washington was given a bunch of stuff. It kind of really stood out, and Ritter ended up being 3% owned, and he was the teams that won the $1 million last year. Last week, there was a $555 game and a $20 game. They both of them had the 3 players from Atlanta, filled them in with 2 Miami players, and then gapped at the rest. Maybe hit on one guy in the $20 game, hit on the Vikings, but Thielen was in around there. St. Brown was around there, but you could see it. It wasn't like of course me, I get beat by because I use Chase and I try to be cute with Waddle. If I use Hill and St. Brown, I can negotiate. I'm really, really close. You know what I mean? So, this is the thing is you need a few more teams and a higher bankroll to kind of get that, second and third level of coverage at some of these teams. You put the foundation in, then you mix up the star receivers and stuff like that. But this week, like you said, is going to be really, really strange because, where are the players going to come out of the woodwork and have surprising games? And, we're in the middle of the fantasy season. We know, like Adam Thielen has had, 4 great games in a row. I mean, the best players in the game typically don't do that, and he's done it. And I know he has a bye week, but on the flip side, these other players have been kind of quiet. Will eventually get going and pop and have a game. Will Jerry Jeudy help? Will Metcalf have a big game? Will Lockett have a big game? Who knows who will it be? But there's going to be some other players that have been kind of quiet. They're gonna shine over the next few weeks, and the standings will tighten up, and it'll be interesting for the season long. And the DFS market makes it difficult to handicap when it's when it does flip, because if you're ahead of it, it's good. If you're behind, you kind of get your clock cleaned that week.
Want to shout out. Kyle said he did have Gainwell, by the way, so he sent the trade in. Now we just hope that it doesn't get vetoed. So he said he'll keep up with us there. Shout out to Marty Lowe. Roll Tide right now. Alabama -8.5 at home against the Tennessee Vols, who you gave up 51 points, I think it was last year, with a loss. Perfect revenge spot, Marty. Early and often, and don't play grab ass the second half. Finish the deal, please. Looking at this menu, and you brought up a lot of great points. I talked to you about, and you brought it up, the guys that haven't done anything yet. It's hard in the DFS. I get it. You got one swing, you got multiple swings. And the fact of the matter is, why would I take a swing here when I can feel more comfortable with someone that's already proven? The Rams, no Kyron Williams, no Ronnie Rivers. We have no idea. It's supposed to be Zach Evans. Then you got Darrell Henderson, you got Gaskins, you got Royce Freeman. So I think some people might try to get cute there and think that it's Zach Evans. I assume that their salary's cheap there. So I'll get back to that. But guys that haven't done anything, Sean, I'm going to throw some names out to you and you'll roll your eyes. Cleveland and Indy, Njoku at tight end. You talked about Cooper. How about, a St. Brown? an Elijah Moore, Detroit, Baltimore. Everyone plays Zays for the catches. Could Bateman finally hold on to a ball over there? Washington and the Giants. Jalen Hyatt, especially if Tyrod Taylor's playing, is this his time to shine? Everyone will flock to maybe Darren Waller at tight end there. On the Washington side, Jahan Dotson, he's on a milk carton, nowhere to be found all year. Buffalo and the Patriots, I mean, I can't believe the line's only 8.5. Maybe they think the Patriots can hang there. Is it a Gabe Davis day? We know what Diggs has done. On the Patriots side, I don't, maybe Stevenson, if anyone there. You talked about Njigba in Seattle. Pittsburgh, we talk about Pickens. The return of Deontay Johnson coming off a bye. Any of those names, I mean, is it just throwing money away? If you were trying to do the star and scrub, team philosophy.
I really have to write this thing because I think it's really got a lot of, I got a lot of things that I need to, checkpoints I need to put on paper for the DFS market to avoid the situations where you take the kind of the high risk and try to be cute kind of players. And you get the lineup in and you're trying to find that last guy and you're trying to save money and you put the 3,000, 3,500 player and it's kind of, he gets an 8 or a 4 and it's, the lineup fits, but you're never going to win the $1 million because you realistically need all players to kind of hit. So, when you're running through the names, I was thinking of, hidden stats, that aren't there. And you mentioned Bateman scoring a touchdown last week. It didn't happen, right? Njoku scored like a 30-yarder last week, got called back because of penalty. Would have been, because I had played one team. I played that quarterback because he was 4,000 with Njoku just for trying to see if I could fit some stuff in. So I know that he had scored and the quarterback would have it. So that's like a hidden touchdown for him. The thing I mentioned with Njigba, he was wide open. Njigba showed something, a progression game, and he potentially could have scored. So, so I'm looking for kind of hints that they're going to kind of come on. So Rashee Rice, he kind of looks like he's ready to, happen. Like he's a really guy that kind of sits there and should be a circle around him this week, because if you play Mahomes, like he's the guy that looks like he eventually might have that game. Maybe maybe the Chargers score and this is maybe a game he gets 6 for 80 and a touchdown or something like that, but his salary's a little bit higher. But the name we haven't mentioned, or you didn't mention when you're running through, is that Christian Watson looked a little better in his last game. Denver's been pretty bad, 5,600. Loves, throwing a few touchdown passes, completion rate kind of messy, and he looks sloppy in the first half some of these games. But Watson at 5,600 probably makes a lot of sense, because he's kind of showed something. He's going to move forward. Hyatt had a catch out of bounds last week, could have got a few more yards. His snap count was up to like 73%. So he's a guy like in the season long, a bye week. This guy's done nothing. You put him in and can kind of take a 0 or whatever, but he could maybe pop and get you like an 11 and be okay. So in the season long, seems like a more legitimate gamble. It doesn't even matter who plays at quarterback because Washington's given a lot. If he's getting on the field, he could hit on a big play. And even if he gets one catch for 56 yards and a touchdown, it makes his day. And that's what you're looking for. But if he had that type of game, and he had a few more targets, you might be like looking for him to make a progression the following game. So I think that Hyatt's kind of a gamble, but he fits in if you're going to play the Giants and have some sort of stack and trying to save some money, and that makes sense. He's $3,000. Even if Tyrod Taylor he's 5,100 between the two of them. That's 8,000. I mean, they only need to score like 32 points to be a good playing, and then you throw in Waller, that's another 5,000. So now you need 50 something points, which isn't that bad for the salary that's invested, especially if you're trying to get like a cup and stuff like that. And so, you're looking for low value hookup. So it depends on what you're doing, but as a filler for Hyatt for a different team, kind of too risky. So it has to kind of make sense when you put the lineup structure together. You mentioned Flowers. I think he's kind of trending up. 2 weeks against Pittsburgh, he was, he could have had tons of yards. He had some drops, but whatever missed him. But he did score last week, 6 for 50, kind of trending in the right direction. Detroit's got a pretty good defense. I think everybody's kind of like, Detroit's going to make a run. They're 5-1. So is that typical of the NFL? Is when now they kind of put out the flat game, in their defense, because they've actually given up some points. They gave up 37 to Seattle. They give up 20 in some of the games. They're definitely playing better. They got a star with Hutchinson and stuff like that, but they will score. And I think they've had games of the over has come in 3 out of the 6 games. And I mean, I'm saying the over, it was like a 74 or 60 and a 54. So like these are going like not sneaking over. There's points being scored in these games of the Lions, and the Lions are on the road. They're undefeated. So all that stuff going on. So I think the main part is whenever you're looking, especially at the receiver, whatever, and we're looking at DFS market, which kind of have a 2 or 3 week window of kind of doing it. Are they trending? And probably more important is, can that guy score a touchdown? Because ultimately, you need touchdowns to win in this DFS market. Those are separator scores. You need it in guys that can score multiple touchdowns, can put up bigger scores. We're not going to pick I guess Puka Nacua or whatever, beginning of the year, he was $3,000 and he was a lot better player. And, he was putting up a lot more fantasy points than we expected. But typically, if you're shopping at the bottom of the aisle, you're trying to get 12 points out of them, 14, and hopefully you can add a 30-point player. So interesting dilemma at the receiver position, all around. But there's a lot of them, like even Johnson from Pittsburgh, and he's coming back. But yeah, he's going to catch his 5 or 6 passes and 50 yards. Quarterback play hasn't been great, but he doesn't have a history of scored a lot of touchdowns. So yeah, put him in. It's against the Rams. I mean, I thought their secondary had risk, and but the quarterback, I don't think he's going to throw 3 touchdown passes. Do you? So and he doesn't score that often. So and I guess probably they just helped. Freiermuth was ruled out. I thought Freiermuth was going to play this week. I guess he had a setback. So I mean, that does help some of the action back to the wide receivers. So, but Pickens scored last week, so maybe he can build off his, and have another game. And he doesn't need a 30, but maybe he gets a 20. And his salary's at $5,500, so he needs about 22. But if the Rams play from the lead and the other quarterback has thrown 50 times or something, that could be a factor. So, a lot going on in my head there.
Well, you brought up something that catches my eye, because I'm going to go back to our dog track days, and I call it the flash and fade, a race where a dog hits the lid, gets to the corner, got the lead, and then just starts backing up and caught. Usually the next time out, he'll go box the wire. You're talking about the same thing in DFS, where guys that are trending up, or you even talked about the hidden touchdowns, but you talked about Rashee Rice, which again, he is trending in the right direction. This is a game where I think there's a lot of potential game flow back and forth. I talked backstage on the sense of urgency from the Chargers. 2 and 3 must win. The line opened at 6. It's down to 5.5. I love the Chargers not only to cover. I think that they could steal this game. Chiefs lost opening day to the Lions, haven't lost since. And just gentlemen like just finding ways, next man up. Kell's still not 100%, yada, yada, yada. My question to you is, we have those Monday morning calls every week, and I ask, how'd you do? And, the last 2 or 3 weeks, especially, you have said, we got to the foundation. If I did this like last week, if I got off of betting on the come on Waddle and I think it was Devontae Smith or whatever it was, and I stuck to the hot guys, the Mozart and the Hills, or you had Mozart already, but Hill and someone else, you have been right there. I know a guy that you have a lot of in the regular season, stake of, came out today. Dan Campbell says, hey, I don't want to lean on him, but we have no choice. It's his time, and that's Jahmyr Gibbs. I do not have the salary, obviously, in front of me. No Montgomery. Sounds like Craig Reynolds, toe issue, hammy issue. I don't know even if he's going to play. I know Barry Sanders is out. I don't know who they're going to bring back. Obviously, DeAndre Swift still in Philly. What is Gibbs' salary, and do you have him going forward this Sunday in the DFS with the, hey, this could be the 15 to 17 carries. This could be a Kamara game. 15 to 17 carries and maybe 7-8 catches in the check down game.
Well, you mentioned Barry Sanders is out this week, and I think he's been out for a few weeks, but I think you meant David Montgomery. But
I was being sarcastic. I was being sarcastic that Barry Sanders is not here.
Yeah. No, but anyways, yeah. I mean, you look at that situation as, last year the Lions running backs were really good. Montgomery had a couple good games, and he was really coming on. That offense has been pretty good, even with some injuries at wide receiver and stuff like that. They didn't have Williams, and then St. Brown missed a game, and they still threw the ball pretty good. So, Gibbs sliding into that thing, he gets that mystique of his salary $6,300, so he needs about 25 fantasy points. He hasn't done anything that gets you excited. He hasn't got into space. He hasn't shown that explosiveness, but we know he has the talent. And the Ravens are pretty good probably against the run, and their defense wants to blitz the ball. So, when they blitz, they're blitzing against the run too. But if their offensive line, which we thought was pretty good, creates a seam, he might get more space. So I think Gibbs falls into that wild card tier where he could be the explosive player. But people might not fight for him due to like if his salary was like $4,800, he would be on a lot of teams, but he's in that range. I think, and even in my projections, the first run of it, he's not even like in the top 15, but I probably had something, somebody else split in time. I had Reynolds, getting some touches and stuff like that. So Reynolds is backing up, and if he's going to play less, they may play another running back. But, Gibbs, beginning of the week, we kind of unclear practice, but it looks like he's trending. So my next update, he will be higher. Will Detroit score more than rushing touchdowns game? I don't think so. Especially with, Montgomery's a little, better player in that area. And Gibbs has to kind of prove himself in that. And he, but Gibbs will catch some passes. So if they're losing, so there's a lot going on there, but Gibbs is explosive. And because you brought up that name, the other player, that's kind of overpriced for what he's done is Bijan Robinson. He's kind of been pretty good. I think he's on pace for, I want to say the right numbers because I don't want to, I wrote him up just to, you just need a mental picture of what's going on over there. So he's on pace for 1,671 yards and 74 catches, right? So that's, if you add those together in a PPR format, that's about 240 points. He scored 2 touchdowns, so probably say 6. He's on pace for 270 points. Like, that's a pretty good back, right? And he hasn't scored a rushing touchdown, and he's splitting with the other back. Last week he was on the field for 79% of it, and he's going into Tampa, which, they play pretty good defense, haven't allowed more than 2 touchdowns in the game. But is Tampa, at the end of the year, are they going to be, play at this level for the whole season? They're going to have a couple clunkers, I think. We saw the, Detroit kind of pick them apart a little bit. And not that Atlanta has the quarterback play to do that, but they could run the ball better. And what did we see in that in the rookie season of Adrian Peterson? Do you remember that? He was kind of relatively quiet, and he had that game. I think it was pretty early in the year against the Bears, went into it. And I think he ran for like 250 yards or something. And once he hit that stride and he really put his stamp on, him as a fantasy, player. So Robinson hasn't had that stamp game, but he could score a touchdown. He could get, more catches. He could get, a 30-point game. His salary really requires that, but he's a guy like you're not going to fight for, and maybe he's not in the thought process, but 2 weeks ago, I had him in a home game that I thought was favorable, and he kind of burnt me, but he's the type of player that you can't like totally dismiss because he has talent and he doesn't have opportunity. So, when you're talking Gibbs has that. Matchup isn't ideal. I would think that Robinson's matchup against Tampa, based on stats, it probably both don't look as attractive, but at least for a running back. But I think that, Robinson's in the mix and Gibbs, if I use Lamar, I'm going to have some teams in the $20 million maker. I'm going to have Gibbs on the other side with St. Brown. And I probably will sprinkle in Flowers and Andrews. I might break up Flowers and Andrews and maybe try to have one. I'll have Andrews probably on all of them, but I'll have maybe one, and maybe just, Bateman's probably pretty low and mix it up there. So it's like these, but, we got so many things rolling in your head. It's like you're running up to the window when we mentioned the dog track and, 30 seconds. I actually got to say something now because I'm running out of time, and give me the 6 over the 8-7, whatever. And, whatever we're going to do. But so you can take all this information, you go through it. We still have secondary news. I need to update the projections. 2 or 3 weeks ago, McCaffrey was rated pretty good, top running back and stuff like that, but more like 28 points. But when Elijah Mitchell backed out of it, he suddenly went from a guy that was, a good separator score. Now is a good chance he's going to score 2 touchdowns, and he kind of pushed higher. So, you got to be careful of that stuff. And then you mentioned Evans, and is kind of an interesting player as well because he's so cheap, but he will be a cheap filler and people will use him based on his opportunity.
I just got a commercial in my ear. I apologize. Yeah, that's the hardest part. You do all the work all week and then you get up to the window and then just the thought process, a million times, whether it's at the dog track, the horse track, whether it's at a sports book, Shawn, and you got someone to the right and someone to the left and you're focusing in on your plays. And then this guy's just pounding away the 7 with the 8. This guy over here is pounding the 7 and the 8. I say the same thing at the sports book. If everyone's running to the window and playing the same thing, you might want to back out of it because those people that run to the window and place their wages right at the bell, you never see them walking back and cashing those tickets. And when you get into the DraftKings Sportsbook and you got all these players in, and then you'll listen to them for the late news, and you got to get, the previews going on, it's got to be a pain in the what. So having going to the window with conviction, and you talked about Lamar, you've talked about Andrews. Lastly, let's talk about quickly here the defenses. Again, short slate. I mean, I don't have prices in front of me. We know how inept the Patriots defense has been. I mean, offense has been. That totals down to 40. Let me backtrack, by the way. 3-4 years ago, the average total score for the NFL was 43.9 points a game. It is down to just over 41 points a game. And last week, the unders came 11-3. So it happened earlier in the year where it was a big unders week. And then the following week, it was a big overs week. So maybe that will come back and we'll get some overs here. And I know you like to kind of cheat the defenses there. George, let me just ask this. George says, hey, guys, should I panic on Olave? George, I am a huge fan of Olave. He's got the skills to pay the bills. Unfortunately, we have checked down Charlie down throwing the ball. I think at the end of the year, it's going to come out Carr needed shoulder surgery. That's why, when he tried to throw a deep ball to Olave, he missed him by 20 yards and he's screaming at Olave. He missed Rashid last week for about a 60-yarder. I'm not panicking on Olave. I know Shawn's a big Michael Thomas guy. I'll ask you this. Are you panicking on Olave, Shawn?
No, I mean, he's had a couple clunkers, but overall he's been okay. He doesn't, I didn't expect him coming in the year to be score impactful touchdowns, maybe a little bit more than he did last year. I think overall he had 3 or 4 games that are pretty good. He scored a touchdown against New England. This week he had like 15 targets. I think he had 7 catches. I don't know. His yards weren't what they should have been, but sometimes he's not on the same page. Carr, like you said, throws the balls out of bounds. He gave him the shot at the end of the game and he didn't catch it. I saw somebody on Twitter this week, like, when the game's on the line and you got to make a throw, Michael Thomas is the guy you got to go to. But, they don't really run, they don't run plays. Like, Michael Thomas hasn't got into that where they're running plays for him. He's like the lead guy, he's, I'll look at him if he's open and we're looking for Olave and, throwing it to Kamara and stuff like that. But Olave, he's a good player. He just got, that little toe thing or whatever's going on. But he needs better quarterback play. He needs the team to block a little better up front so they have longer drives. So I don't think it's really his problem. But he's a good player, and I think he's going to be, a top 20 receiver. Does he need to be a top 12 for you to win for his price point? Possibly. I didn't draft him. I faded him this year because of where he went. obviously Ridley wasn't the winning guy there either. So, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah.
Well, someone put up a tweet today. So all those wide receivers there, the Devontae Smiths, the Olaves, the Ridleys, the T. Higgins, and there was one more. They've all sucked, so don't worry about it. But he also has a second question. And this is a tough one, George, because if it's not broken, don't try to reinvent the wheel here. If it's, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. George is 6-0. He's got a team well stacked here too. Tua, CMC, Kenneth Walker, Cup, Olave, Goddard, and he's got in the flex James Cook. I got a spot exactly like that with James Cook now as my flex guy. You're in a high-powered offense. And you're using them as your flex. So you're in good hands there. But he asks, should I trade James Cook for Waddle and A-Chain? Listen, I have A-Chain everywhere. We got good news. He'll be ready and back in week 11, thank God. And you've been betting on the come with Waddle. For me, I'm going to stay pat. I'm going to I don't like what's going on there with Latavius Murray, but Buffalo just doesn't know how to push a running back. They just don't know, they're just wired where they got Allen back there. He looks at Diggs. He'll look at his tight ends. He'll throw it to Gabe Davis. I'm going to stand pat here. As much as I like Waddle and obviously I like A-Chain, I'm not giving away 4 weeks of Cook for the A-Chain owner. Your thoughts there, Waddle or A-Chain for James Cook?
I can't trade for an injured player even has upside because there's always a potential there could be a setback or it takes longer than expected. So I can't do that. But I would say that I would prefer to have Waddle as the consistency factor over Cook. I think Cook is a good player. We don't know what his touchdown upside will be. Allen will steal it. They brought in Murray a couple times. They are rotating a second back. Waddle's been relatively quiet, but he catches 4 or 5 passes a game, especially if it's a PPR format. So I would prefer to have Waddle, especially when you add in the fact that Miami is scoring a ton. But, if there is an injury, if Tua has obviously has a concussion or somebody gets knocked out, that's going to change that a lot. But he's only been sacked like 4 or 5 times this year. They've done a pretty good keeping him upright. And so I would trade for Waddle. I would think that Waddle in fantasy drafts going into the season was drafted a lot higher than Cook. But, Cook's a talented player. I know it's the same thing. I don't think Buffalo is going to commit to him.
And actually, he does have Tua. So like me, I do love the hookup. I love the fact that, hey, you're getting the points from Tua. And as I like to say, if he throws it to Waddle, you're getting the double bubble. So I'll second that. Again, my only fear is when you give up a running back, CMC is already a little nicked up right now. I don't know if you got Elijah Mitchell or Jordan Mason on your bench. I got Mason everywhere a couple weeks ago. So if you have Mason, then it's okay. But I get a little leery this time of year giving up on backs for a wide receiver there. Back to the defense. Again, I assume Bill's going to be pretty high up there this week, Sean. Seattle, sneaky defense against Arizona. Coin toss, Pittsburgh and the Rams. Obviously, you're not going in on Kansas City and the Chargers. And then Green Bay and Denver. Denver's been Swiss cheese. Maybe Green Bay is sneaky. Cleveland at the Colts, Bears and Raiders. No, thank you. And then Atlanta, Tampa. Any thoughts on the defenses?
In the DFS market, it's ultimately the first stop is when you're doing the defense for the DFS market, especially when you're doing a single lineup, is you start from the bottom of the salary and work your way up. You're like, which one of these bottom tier defenses has a chance? And the best bottom tier defense is the Chiefs. They're $2,400. Yeah, they're playing the Chargers, but they play pretty good. They can have sacks sometimes. They haven't had really any defensive scores, but overall their defense has played pretty good. They got good cornerbacks. I think that's, the matchup isn't ideal, but even if they gave up, say 24 points, there's always a chance that they get 2 or 3, 4 sacks, an interception that's returned for a touchdown or a fumble and still, give you 12 or 13 points. So in the DFS market, it would probably be Kansas City. And even in the season long, I have no problem playing Kansas City I'm not looking to get out of that game to get us to another defense. But if in the season long, I gravitated to Seattle. The Rams, you give them a shot. Green Bay, maybe. Even you mentioned the Raiders, kind of not really, but I mean, it's not a bad matchup with a backup quarterback and stuff like that. And the Raiders have showed a little bit of spunk, a little bit. So, but in the DFS market, it's on salary, and who can save me the most money to help me get another player. And I think probably the difference between Seattle and the Chiefs defense is pretty wide as far as play. I think Kansas City's better, but Seattle has shown a little something the last couple of weeks. But it could be $1,100 or $1,200, which is the difference of a pretty good player. I mean, you don't have to fish at $3,500 and gamble on somebody. You could be at a $4,500, $4,800 range, and I don't know the exact numbers, but of a more quality player and help your team structure a little bit better. So Chiefs is my defense. I'll probably be all in on that just because I like the defense in general, and I think the price fits. The last 2 weeks, Carolina scored playing Miami, and the Giants scored against Miami, and they were the lowest two defenses on the board. But you still needed to win last week. It was the Vikings. They scored 21, and the week before there was a few defenses that the Jets, New Orleans, and Pittsburgh. Those were like 27 to 3,100 at DraftKings. So there was 3 of them that were pretty good there. And sometimes you want to match up that defense with your running back. So if you pay Pacheco, you play Kansas City or something like that, like Jets with Hall, Kamara with New Orleans, Pittsburgh. Well, Pittsburgh, no running back with Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh's running backs have yet to identify themselves, even though Warren did look a little better in the last game.
Scroll has been going the whole time. You can go follow Sean on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it on Friday at Sean _Childs. You can get his work at Full Time Fantasy, and you can be a paid subscriber at fantasyanalysis.substack.com. Sean, tell them why and what you got behind the walls and why for 30 cents a day they should be a subscriber.
Well, I mean, it's this time of year where I run through the games on Mondays, a little recap, potential throw in some names that may be helpful in the waiver wire. It's difficult to do a waiver wire report because we all play at different levels, and I can't see who gets dropped in pools. So, it's kind of, that's kind of always an interesting dilemma. I guess I could, write it more for the high stakes market, but we'll see how that goes. But it's more of a overall somebody's trending up and stuff like that. Do the projections on Tuesday. We go through the running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends during the week for the daily games, try to identify some players. And even when I'm writing about them, sometimes I'm writing about a player that's showing that he's not really the best matchup. And there's, some reason to kind of be against it. But, a lot of times they're the better players. I used to do a lot more depth of that, but it requires a lot more time. But, we're just trying to identify players for the DFS market. But, the projections along with some of that can help with some of the decisions, especially if it's a kind of a borderline player that you're putting in there. So, doing that. And then later in the week, I'll update the projections. Did a little bit about baseball, but I haven't gotten the baseball mode. I got about 2 more weeks. So probably in November, I'll start to, push my way forward and try to get ahead of January 1st when I really need to shift gears to baseball and kind of put football on the back burner. But, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of information, and obviously the main reason is you get this podcast, right?
There you go. Well, I think I got good vibes this week. Be interesting to see your final slate and your single. I kind of got a feeling I know where it's going to be initially. So obviously I'll be on the a bat phone with you on Sunday. So all the people that watched and listened, shout out to Mr. Marty Lowe. Shout out to George. Shout out to Kyle. Thank you guys. The questions, we love them. So you got a week to get some more questions. Best of luck in your daily fantasies and obviously your season long. So from myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, from the one and only Shawn Childs, it's Sean _Childs. We wish everyone a blessed day. 4:00 today, 3 Men in the Box. Myself, Matt Grissom, Quentin Mills. We'll talk some NCAA football. And then right after that at 5, Ron live from LA will be talking the more data and analytical parts of the NCAA and NFL at 5:00. So everyone go grab some lunch and we'll see you very, very soon.